Hello and welcome back. Since this year, 2025 is eventually coming to its end, I can't really remember a year that went by so fast, at least in the last 10 years, for me personally, than this year. Was one of the best and the worst years in my life at the same time. Very good things happening, also very not so good things happening. So I'm a bit burnt out by the year, I think, and I'm happy that it's now over. But before it's over, I wanted to make like a recap video. My what do I call this? My favorite vinyl and CD purchases of this year. It's not just newly released stuff, but this video is just about things, records I found this year, old and new, that's really made an impression on me, that I'm really glad that I found them. I think I start with my two favorite newly released albums of this year, albums that came out this year. I think I have two at the number one spot, and this is just going to be a top one. I'm not going to do a top 10 favorite albums of this year video now. I don't even think there are like 10 records that I really liked this year that were newly released. I think there were like 5 or 6 that I really enjoyed, but my two most enjoyed were and still are Rainy Sunday Afternoon by the Divine Comedy. I made several videos about this album and how much I liked it and still like it on this channel. Check those videos out. The other one that really kind of blew me away is Who is the Sky by David Byrne, of Talking Heads fame. I think if this would be a Talking Heads album, we would be talking about one of my 3 favorite Talking Heads albums, and I think I haven't listened to all his solo albums yet, but of the ones I know, and I kind of know the highly regarded ones, this is my favorite of these solo albums I know. Maybe it was a missed opportunity that the Talking Heads didn't reform in order to make this album, because I think they seem to be on kind of a like friendly level at the moment, since they appeared on talk shows together 1, 2 or 3 years ago when they promoted something, can't remember what, I think a film or something, re-released. They were together on talk shows and promoted that. So maybe the egos, especially the ego of David Byrne, maybe it's still too big for the others to reunite. But it's really a missed opportunity, because if this would have been the comeback album of the Talking Heads almost 40 years after they split up, or 35 years after they split up, then this would be one of the best comeback albums of all time, I would say. But still, as a David Byrne album, fantastic. Doesn't diminish the greatness of this album. Just from a marketing point of view, would have been for them really great as a Talking Heads album. But still, fantastic album. Then a great find. In terms of value for money, probably the most amazing find for me of this year was when I found the Beatles in mono CD box for like €100. I can't remember, maybe 1995 or at maximum €100. And this is not one of the fake ones. I know they're the forged ones out there also, but this is a real one. You can tell from the color of the apple and from this line and then certain other things that give it away. No, that's the real thing, the original thing from like 10-15 years ago. And it's in, of course it's second hand, but it's mint quality. It's like almost like it's unplayed, and it's really fantastic to listen to those CDs in mono. I have most, if not all, the Beatle albums on mono, but usually those are very old, sometimes even original pressings from the 60s, which on the one hand is fantastic, but they're like not in the best quality anymore. They're far from mint. So for the first time I could listen to the mono stuff in really great pristine listening quality. I know this was reissued this year, and I suppose this is why this was so cheap, because I bought this like 1 month before the new version of this came out. So I think the seller was maybe the seller was kind of afraid that the prices would go down drastically once the new ones get released. I haven't followed this up. I don't know if the prices are now generally that low. But when I bought this, this was still at the time when, you would be lucky to find this for like 400, 500 euros. So very happy to have this, and also in this quality. And then another category of great vinyl releases that I found this year was the category of new artists that I discovered. Not newcomer artists, but artists from the olden golden days that I finally discovered, and it doesn't happen that often in my life anymore, that I discovering an artist that are really becoming like a fan of, and it happened twice this year. The one that this happened with was Steve Harley, or Cockney Rebel. I started with this album. Of course I was familiar with the big hits, Make Me Smile. This is one of the most famous glam songs from the 70s probably. But I had never listened to an album of him before, and I always thought he's probably like a one-hit wonder. I was very wrong about that. But I thought he was like more like a one-hit wonder, because I never really heard much about his other stuff. And then I bought this album, Psychomodo, and I fell in love with it. I think this is a masterpiece. Fantastic album. And then I thought, okay, let's find out if it's just this one album that I really like that much, or if I will enjoy the others as well. And what can I say? I bought like most of his classic 70s albums. This is the one with Make Me Smile on it. This is a reissue on colored vinyl with a second disc with outtakes and so on. So it's really great release. Also, what's it called? The Best Years of Our Lives. Also fantastic. I think The Best Years of Our Lives and Psychomodo are my two favorite of the studio albums I bought. Then I also bought these two. What's it called? Timeless Flight. And this one, and they're all great. All those albums are fantastic. And then I even bought this Live from the late 70s, this Live double album, which is like a best of in live, because it's at the end of his classic run of albums from the 70s, so all the hits are on there, plus a very nice cover of George Harrison's Here Comes the Sun. Fantastic, also a great live band. So I think this is probably one of the most underrated artists ever, at least outside of the UK. I think in the UK most people are aware how great this guy was because he passed away like 2 or 3 years ago. But he's almost on the same level. His 70s output is almost on the level of the 70s output of David Bowie. I think he probably doesn't have the same quality of his 80s, 90s and so on work. So maybe David Bowie is clearly the bigger artist in all kinds of ways, and also maybe the more visionary artist, because in a way you could accuse him of being like a rip-off. At times he really tries to sound like David Bowie, like a mix of Lou Reed, Bob Dylan and David Bowie. So maybe he's not as original as David Bowie was, but in terms of the songwriting of his 70s work, I think it's almost the same level, and this means a lot, that's saying a lot. Fantastic find. And another artist I newly discovered this year is the Italian singer-songwriter Umberto Tozzi. Like with Steve Harley, of course, I was familiar with the big hit, or in Umberto's case with the big hits. I knew Ti Amo, very schmaltzy ballad, and I also knew, of course, Gloria, which the riff of Gloria, of course, was the main influence of the Disco 2000 riff by Pulp, for example. So I was aware of those two tracks, and I thought, it's more like a novelty thing, like those Italian artists often seem to be. But then, I I started out with, in a record shop. I bought this and didn't know much about this. I didn't even know when I bought it that this is a live album, but it turned out it's a live album. And again, like the Cockney Rebel album, it's like a best of live because all his greatest songs are on this live album. It's a fantastic live album. I think this is now one of my top 10 favorite live albums of all time. The Cockney Rebel album probably also. Fantastic, intense performances of those great songs. And then I bought some of the studio albums, the ones I found in record shops. And they're also great, but the live album is my favorite album because the studio versions often tend to be, like I said, with Ti Amo, which is very schmaltzy, a bit more like played safe, mainstream kind of productions. Remind me of Wings, Paul McCartney and Wings mid-70s work in a strange way. But the live album, also like Wings, if you compare it to Wings Over America, much more rocking, much more intense, fiery. The live stuff is the best, but also the studio versions, great artists that I was aware of. I knew the name Umberto Tozzi, of course, before, like I knew the name Steve Harley before, but now I know how great those artists truly are, and that's fantastic. And the last one, this I'm going to show, this is the best vinyl find this year in terms of how, audiophile and visually also. The design of the record, but the way it sounds, this is the best one I bought this year. I bought it in Rome when I was on holiday in Rome. Can, German krautrock band Can, live in Stuttgart, 1975. This is the this is the best looking release I bought this year, and also the sound quality. It's it's also a live album. I'm not really a live album guy usually, but some of my favorite albums that I discovered this year are all live albums. And again, I think I never liked Can more than when listening to this album. I have, they're famous, they're very famous album. I can't remember the name of it. I have this album for many years now, and I kind of liked it, but wasn't really too impressed with it. But live again, this is music, Orange Vinyl. This is music that works live much better for me. This very like jam-oriented kind of music, and it sounds fantastic. And yeah, it's a incredible live album. Again, live in Stuttgart. So those are my, let's say, favorite vinyl and CD purchases of 2025. Only 2 newly released albums. Wasn't the best year in terms of new releases for my taste, I think. But yeah, that was 2025. Thank you very much for watching. Until next time, goodbye.